Here.
I believe we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the draft minutes of the audit committee meeting of May 20th. I think they're fine. There may be some minor adjustments. I'd like a motion.
That's going to have it.
Oh, sorry.
It's this one right here, the amplifier. It's this one right here. There we go.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make some motion.
Second. Hearing no changes, we'll assume that they are approved. If there be some minor things, we can have our secretary make them. All right, our first order of business on the regular agenda is the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation. As a number of you know, I am on that board, so I'm going to recuse myself and turn it over to my colleague, Mike Spitzer.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Chair. Good morning. Marlene, would you like to introduce the people that are
Yes.
here with you?
Thank you,
If you'd
Mike.
like to make any opening comments?
Actually, what I've asked for this time was that my colleague Julian John, to my right, just do a very, short statement on our financial performance and on our management letter, major highlights of the findings, and then ask KPMG, Maria Tizo, who will be back in 2 seconds, and Jim Martell, if they just would like to mention what their experience of the audit was. So, Julian?
Good morning. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to go over our overall financial position and operations and comment on some of the major variances in the statement of net position as well as the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. The corporation's total net deficit position decreased by approximately $107 million. Our net investment in capital assets increased by approximately $156.7 million as the corporation continues to upgrade facilities and pay down debt. The corporation's unrestricted net deficit position increased from $7.76 billion to $7.8 billion. And there was a net decrease in cash equivalents of approximately $17.4 million. Just to review some significant financial ratios, our current ratio in 2014 was 0.87, and last fiscal year, 2013, was 0.91. Our quick ratio, 0.34 compared to 0.42 in the prior fiscal year. Our days cash on hand decreased from 21.41 in 2013 to 19.5 in 2014. And our net days revenue in patient receivables decreased from 81.28 to 71.91. In 2014, the corporation adopted the GASB statement number 65, which is items previously reported as assets and liabilities, and statement number 68, accounting for statement 68, accounting and financial reporting for pensions. The impact of GASB 65 was approximately, on FY13, was approximately $9.8 million, and the impact of GASB 68 on the FY13 financial was $3.4 billion. Our statement of net position, just going over some of the elements, our estimated third-party payer settlements receivable increased by $539.4 million from FY13, and this was because of a delay in of us receiving $540 million from our UPL payments. Grants receivable decreased by approximately $222.9 million from 13, primarily due to the receipt of Community Development Block Grant funds of $183 million, and that was recorded as a receivable in the prior year, and $20 million in Interim Access Assurance Fund, IAAF funds, received during 2014 for 2015. Our capital assets net increased by approximately $140 million. This was due to major modernization projects at Harlem Hospital, Gouverneur, as well as construction on the Henry J. Carter property. At June 30, 2014, the corporation had capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation, of $3.5 billion compared to $3.36 in the prior fiscal year. Accrued salaries, fringe benefits, and payroll taxes increased by $104.8 million. This was due to the accrual of collective bargaining settlements. Our due to City of New York decreased by $104 million because of as the city agreed to fund collective bargaining settlements in the amount of $114 million. Moving on to our,
Julie, can I interrupt you? I didn't hear, why did the amount from the city of New York go up? The amount due to the city of New York go up?
the due to City of New York, it decreased by $103 million.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misread it.
Okay. Statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Our net patient service revenue increased by $419 million, primarily due to Bellevue Hospital Center and Coney Island Hospital coming back on stream after a temporary closing due to Sandy. There were also other contributors. One, we had an increase in UPL revenue of $76 million. Two, we had increased dish maximization payments of $104 million. Patient service revenue increased from third parties by $114 million, and other third-party retroactive settlement accruals of $120 million. Appropriations from remittances to City of New York net increased by approximately $400 million. This was due to an agreement with the city that the corporation would not reimburse the 2013 malpractice and debt service of approximately $121 and $150 million respectively, and the city's agreement to fund collective bargaining settlements in the amount of $114 million. There was an offset of approximately $17.2 million in interest expense paid by the city for HHC. Personal services increased by $129.5 million, and this was due to an increase in collective bargaining estimates for 2014. With regards to our management letter, KPMG noted 11 observations across the corporation. 8 observations were specific to central office, and they pertain to external financial reporting package review, affiliation contracts, capitalization of software costs, centralization of services, vendor lists upgrades, AP subledger to GL reconciliation, account analysis, reconciliation, and information technology. There were 2 observations that were specific to 3 facilities, Dr. Susan Smith McKinney, Kohler Goldwater Hospital, as well as Coney Island, and they pertain to fixed assets and custodial accounts. And there was 1 observation that was corporate-wide, and that had to do with accrued expenses. The corporation concurred with KPMG's observations and the relevant recommendations. Most of the recommendations we have already complied with or are in the process of implementing. The only exception is the recommendation regarding centralization of services. We are currently conducting a study to determine the feasibility of centralized functions and the associated opportunities to increase efficiencies and reduce costs. That concludes mine.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, actually, I misread my note. The question was really about the decline in the amount payable to the city of New York. My recollection is that some of that was a write-off of the receivable by the city. Is that correct? Some of the reason that the amount that you show is payable to the city between 13 and 14, some of the reasons for the decrease was a write-off.
Right, I'm considering your language, because I would characterize it differently, although it may be the same thing. So in essence, as a function of Superstorm Sandy and the severe impact it had on HHC, including, and I know Julian just said this, but it bears repeating, the closure of Bellevue Hospital and the closure of Coney Island Hospital and the cash drain that had on HHC for that year, there was a budget decision that the city would not expect HHC to pay for FY13 malpractice and debt service. I wouldn't necessarily call that a write-off per se. It really was a funding decision.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
just to give you some context, and the city continues to support our very important mission, and we've had some very, very difficult times, and I know many of you probably are aware that we've had cash flow problems in recent months, as the federal government and the state actually have lengthened the period of time to process certain supplemental Medicaid payments, and the city has been very helpful to us in making sure that, and no pun intended, we can weather these storms, so that's why you're seeing what you saw. If there aren't any other questions, I would turn over to Maria Tizo to talk about the process. Mike? Yeah.
On page 7, the estimated third-party receivable increased $539 million, because you said the money wasn't received in 14. I was just curious if that money came in 15.
Some of it has, and it's coming, like there were actually, within the last couple of weeks, a bunch of those checks have been coming in, and some of it may happen in the next couple of weeks. So this is, so Mike, HHC, because of its mission and its very large Medicaid and uninsured population, is largely dependent on what are called supplemental Medicaid payments. And these payments are processed by the state and involve pre-audit checks by the federal government, and they take a while. And the federal government decided to standardize the methodology across all states for calculating these payments, so there was a massive delay. So we've been pushing out these payments actually for years, and we just got, I'd say 2 weeks, was it 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
2 weeks ago, we just got 300 million of that, and we're expecting another 200 and something million probably next week, and then another 250 million the next month. So that's been, in addition to the storm and the loss of revenue from patient revenue, this particular process issue has been a real confounder, and we've been managing the cash flow by delaying payments to the city, and they've been very, very supportive of that. But we've sort of broken through a bit of the logjam on those payments, and a lot of it has come very recently and will come in the next month.
And your expectation is we'll run more current?
My expectation is that there will continue to be different log jams unless and until the process changes, which we're trying to negotiate for a major process change. But it takes a very long time to get the state and the federal government to agree on something like this.
Thank you.
Also, you had mentioned almost $400 million in the appropriations from the city increased, because I think of the forgiveness of the debt service, as well as long-term judgment and claims. Is that a process that's going to be continuing, or is that just a one-time?
No, and the other thing that influenced that number was that the de Blasio administration has funded our collective bargaining.
Thank you.
And that was a major, a major amount of money. And that you saw some of that in that number, Mike. But that was the other piece, the fiscal 13 malpractice debt service was a one-time budget negotiation.
Just going through my notes. On page 14, and I guess it also gets to the management letter, corporations' issues and challenges. And in the management letter, I was going to ask, did HHC respond to the issues that KPMG highlights for the healthcare industry? So would you please quickly address what this is?
So I would venture to say that a very similar comment, perhaps almost word for word, but I'm looking at Maria and Jim, will be present in every hospital system that they audit. And with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act at the federal level and the implementation at the state level of the Medicaid redesign team recommendations, which included the state's enactment of a global cap on Medicaid expenditures, as well as the state's implementation of something called the Delivers System Reform Incentive Program. Hospital systems are being asked to adapt and change to all of these new requirements. As the public hospital system, we have unique challenges because of the population that we serve, many of whom were not able to partake of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act because of their immigration status. So in January of 2014, we saw the implementation of the exchanges. That meant that there was an opportunity for some folks who had not had insurance to purchase insurance on the exchanges with tax benefits. There also was an opportunity, or there was also the enactment of the state takeover of Medicaid, and so the process for applying for Medicaid changed dramatically in January of 2014. So that was a major challenge for HHC just on a process level, to be able to change our operations to adapt to a new process for applying for Medicaid with our patients, which I think was a success. I think it's actually easier now for us to apply for Medicaid. But one of the hallmarks of the ACA is that the states that used to have Medicaid programs in which the eligibility thresholds for participation were actually destitution, those eligibilities moved up to being much higher. So now nationwide, it's 138% of federal poverty level will get you Medicaid. But New York State historically had a Medicaid program that was almost on par with this improvement. So the opportunity in New York State to get a benefit of having uninsured convert was much more minimal than it was in other states. Also, because of the immigrant population who are ineligible for either Medicaid or the tax subsidies, there's a huge population at HHC that are not eligible for this benefit. The ACA was funded, however, with cuts to traditional funding programs that we are largely dependent on. So that's why it's a huge challenge for us, because we're not going to get a lot of the benefit, but we're going to get a lot of the cut. And we're going to get more of a share of a cut than the rest of the country and less of a share of a benefit. So that's a big issue. The Medicaid redesign team created something, large rate decreases in Medicaid, which also is a big problem for HHC because we're such a large Medicaid program. But it also has put a lot of pressure on the hospital industry not to admit patients that are perceived to be better off getting treated in the community. So there's multifaceted ways that the regulators are trying to reduce utilization of hospitals. As a consequence, we've seen a dramatic decline in our utilization. So we had we had kind of a 1-2 punch because we had the storm and the decline because of the closure, but there's also a decline because of the rules changing. So what we're doing is our president is implementing a program so that we can increase market share by focusing our attention on our Metro Plus Health Plan, which is our managed care plan. And I don't know if you've read in the paper, but we have this goal of getting 1 million members in Metro Plus. And we now have 470,000, maybe 480,000 members at this point in time. So essentially doubling the membership of Metro Plus. And they're going at it at many fronts, continuing to try and get people who are eligible through the Affordable Care Act, but also we're working to try and cover city employees and other populations that we haven't typically covered, and we're working with all kinds of folks to look for new populations, as well as to retain the population we have and reduce the folks that leave us. So that's kind of high level where we're going. In addition, we are implementing a major program to improve the patient experience so that we will, at HHC, improve our patient loyalty, and in essence also to improve our market share. So those are kind of the major ways as a system we're reacting. In addition, we are implementing a new state-of-the-art electronic medical record, which should help us in the new environment because you're supposed to be able to exchange information among providers much more easily than you used to, and this should really help. So I hope I've answered your question.
You addressed it.
I addressed it, I know. It wasn't, yeah. But if you want a follow-up question, Mike, I'm happy.
No.
No, okay.
Does anybody else have any questions about the financials or the management letter?
So Maria?
I guess I'll just, I'm sorry, you were going to speak, go ahead. I'll ask a question of you after.
My highlights straight.
Sorry.
Good morning. My name is Maria Tiso. I'm the lead engagement partner on the HHC audit. With me is Jim Martell, who's the account executive. Just a couple of highlights that I wanted to give as it related to the audit process. We did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements of the corporation, which is the highest level of assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. We did report our required communications to the audit committee back in October. If you look at the date of the audit opinion, it was dated October 29th, which is a little later than we normally issue the report. There was one significant accounting pronouncement that was adopted. It was actually early adopted by the City of New York as well as HHC, which was GASB 68, which is accounting for financial of pensions. So these financial statements now record a liability for the pensions of about $2.5 billion that was actually determined. And the accounting pronouncements require that the financial statements retrospectively apply the pronouncement. So you'll see $3.5 billion in the prior year. So that took us a long time to issue the financial statements. We worked diligently with the City of New York and Deloitte & Touche and the other auditors to go through the requirements of the pronouncement. Just some other notes. As part of issuing our opinion, we did look at internal controls over financial reporting. We did not note any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So the comments that management just went through are really best practice and internal control observations that management are working through. Again, we did not note any material errors, irregularities, or legal acts, and if we did, we'd report them to the audit committee of HHC. Okay. That concludes my, my highlight summaries.
Anybody have any
Okay,
questions of
very
the
quickly,
auditor?
very quickly, I think I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that several years ago, there were, not a going concern opinion, but in your management letter and in your discussion with this committee, some concern about the ongoing viability of the corporation. I'm curious if you have any update on that, if you feel more secure in their ability to continue operating, less secure about the same.
Okay, so actually every year we do discuss liquidity and going concern with the audit committee. Obviously, they've had deficiency of operations, and as part of the fact that HHC is a component unit of the City of New York, we need to address it and document it from an audit perspective. But to say that HHC will be a going concern, is probably not realistic. But again, as part of our audit, we have to address it every year.
And that assumption, again, is based on the idea that this is, of course, the city's public hospital system, and that should they fall down, the city would be expected to profit.
Absolutely, exactly. And I think a couple of years ago, and I can't remember if Jim was the lead partner on it, we did put it in there because I think it was the first year that there was a substantial loss from the previous years. But again, we do, just to let you know, we do address it every year.
Thank you.
It was OPEB, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
when the city implemented OPEB, that really changed our balance sheets dramatically.
And one very last comment, which is, I love the schedule that you put in your notes. It's page 27 in the financial statements, where they go through the exact impact of the new GASB standards, dollar for dollar. This is fantastic, and maybe the city will do something like this when we implement OPEB.
We want it to be really transparent, so everybody can see the adjustments to the two accounting pronouncements.
I've never
Thanks.
seen anything like this before. It's great. And
Oh, it's very good.
If there are no other questions, thank you, and enjoy your summer. This time, I'd like to turn it back over to the chair, Bernie Rosen.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Always nice seeing you. All right, the next item on our agenda is the World Trade Center Captive Insurance Company. Their report is of December 31, 2014. Morning, nice to see you, sir. No, make yourself comfortable. Introduce yourselves, if you will, and...
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm David Beester, the General Counsel and Acting President of the WTC Captive Insurance Company. Joining me today are Jim Schoenbeck, the company's CFO, and Todd Thiesfeld from Saslow, Lufkin, and Buggy.
He's from your audit company?
Excuse
He's from the audit firm, yes.
Correct. He's
Where are
our
you
auditor.
located, sir? Yeah, I figured you're not in, okay.
So I'll just give a brief update on captive operations, highlighting the developments since we last met with the committee. Jim will take any questions on our audited financial statements for December 31st, 2014. WTC Captive is a nonprofit corporation licensed and regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services, formed in the aftermath of 9/11, funded with $1 billion from FEMA. Our insurance policy requires that WTC Captive defend the city and its contractors against lawsuits arising out of debris removal and to pay resulting damages. On behalf of the city and contractors, the Captive reached a settlement of over 10,000 individual cases in 2010. Settlement was realized with over 95% of the plaintiffs opting in and culminating in payments to virtually all plaintiffs by February 2012. Settlement payments to date total over $665 million. Developments from 2014 included the Second Circuit ruling on disputed settlement amounts. Second Circuit reversed Judge Hellerstein regarding certain payments under our final settlement agreement and remanded for further proceedings on another category of possible payments. The disputed amounts that are unresolved stem from the requirement for the WTC Captive to pay additional amounts depending on how many total plaintiffs opted in excess of the required 95%. These proceedings are ongoing regarding the calculation of that percentage and the resulting additional payments. The reopened Victim Compensation Fund continues to attract new claims, keeping the claim count of the WTC Captive low. And the WTC Captive continues to be managed by a small professional staff. Ms. LaSala left to pursue other opportunities, and so our full slate of directors is before you today, and we also have an office manager. 2014 was a relatively quiet year for the WTC Captive, and so with that, I will turn the discussion over to Jim for questions regarding the financial statements.
Excuse me, before we go on, I just want to mention that I'm a representative on the board of WTC, so I will recuse myself from the discussion.
And additionally, I'm an officer of the corporation, so I also will recuse myself.
And if the committee would like, I can review a few highlights of our financial performance, or we can turn directly to any questions you have at whatever.
Maybe it's best if you review and then
Okay, great.
it may answer some of the questions. And go ahead.
Understood. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So generally speaking, the operations and the accounting of the WTC Captive are pretty straightforward. The only source of revenues for the company is any investment income off of our investment portfolio. Expenses for the company that run through the P&L are related to the small administrative staff that Mr. Beester noted, and our outside professional service providers. Our operating model has always been to maintain a small, full-time staff, and then we supplement any required activities or services by hiring outside vendors on a need-to basis. Under deposit accounting, which is our accounting model, there's a non-cash accretion expense that runs through our P&Ls, and it's an offset to our investment income. And since we have originally accrued for the deposit liability, the insurance deposit liability, any contract expenditures, so loss adjustment expenses and losses when they're ultimately paid, do not run through the P&L, but they just relieve that deposit liability that we accrued for on day one. So for the period 2014, our investment income before accretion expense, but after netting our portfolio services against it, was $1.2 million. We had that non-cash accretion expense of $4.9 million. We had operating expenses of $2.4 million, and that resulted in a net operating loss of $6 million. Contract expenditures, which once again didn't go through the P&L, didn't run through the P&L, we had lost payments of $3.8 million. Those
were settlements, that 3.8.
entirely related, yes, sir, to continuing obligations under the final settlement agreement. And we had loss adjustment expenditures of 1.1 million. So we started the year,
May I stop you, please? What is the distinction between the loss adjustment expense and the regular loss expense?
Right. So, loss adjustment expenses and loss expenses, losses would be settlements or payments to claimants. Loss adjustment expenses are expenses related to defending and adjusting claims as they come in. So typically, if you have so our loss adjustment expenses that are related to perhaps future losses, would be our claims administration, outside service provider, attorneys, coverage counsel.
Okay.
That's helping us decide
Okay.
if claims should be covered, and any defense expenditures if we defend a claim and prior to, say, settling it or it resolving itself into a loss obligation.
Okay, thank you.
We finished the year with total assets of $325.9 million. 5.3 million of those were restricted assets that were in our settlement fund. We expect to be paying those out in the near future. And that was a decline of about $6 million in assets over the course of the year. The last few things I will point out, given the fact that the company does operate under deposit accounting, which can be a little bit confusing for the uninitiated, historically we have provided a Dear Reader
very
letter,
helpful.
and this kind of reduces the company's operating performance to really an economic basis. So what we do in this letter, and there's a kind of a table on page 2, is we start with we kind of strip out the impact of this non-cash expense, and we bring in those loss adjustment expenses and loss payments so that you can kind of see the economic performance of the company. So it starts off, it says our gross investment income, $1.5 million. We had investment management fees of $300,000. Gets you down to the pre-accretion expense net investment income of $1.2 million. And then we show that the same operating expenses that run through the P&L of $2.4 million in the major categories. But then we bring in those amounts that do not go through the P&L, the loss adjustment expenses and the claims
It was very
indemnity
helpful.
payments, so that you can see that the economic impact to the company is that we had expenditures that exceeded investment income by $6 million, which resulted in the decline of our total assets of $6 million.
Okay, that's very.
And then just finally, relative to the 2014 audit, it was dated March 18th, 2015. It covered the years ending December 31, 2014 and 13. It was performed in accordance with applicable guidance, governmental auditing standards, OMB Circular A133, audits of state, local governments, and nonprofit organizations. And we received an unmodified opinion letter issued by our auditors. And with that, I will open it up to any questions you might have of any of us.
You have a lot of insurance clients, sir. I thought so, that's why. And they all use accretion? I'm teasing it.
In order to hit the threshold of deposit accounting, there really can't be risk transfer. In a typical insurance company, there's risk transfer, and premiums and losses will go through the P&L. But when there's no risk transfer, really, which is this program that's been set up, you switch to deposit accounting, which is really just creating the liability, and you pay your claims down and just reduce the liability.
Yeah. Just very quickly, on page 25, you point out that you're covering incidents from September 11 through September 11, 2001 through August 30th, 2002. Claimants would have to show that the impairment or whatever it was happened during that period. I remember one of your predecessors, I asked the lady, You even do first responders as well as contractors, right?
Yes, I mean, we've had a variety of different individual claimants, and the August 2002 date is really, it's an exposure period rather than the manifestation period. So if somebody was exposed during that period and becomes ill later, there still could be coverage for that claim. And the plaintiff population or claimant population over time has included first responders, people working for contractors, volunteers at the site, NYPD, FDNY, sanitation workers, pretty much anybody you can imagine who might have been at the site.
I see. Go ahead, Jim Wood.
One of the concerns has always been when the illness will appear. So you had a period of time where the event happened, you had some time lapse for people to move into this, and you've done a very good job of coming to a settlement with that group. Is there any additional information going forward about experience beyond that, about individuals subsequently following claims? Because you do have also a significant amount of resources set aside. I know it's a real future kind of thing, but can you kind of give some highlights of where you think you might be?
Sure. So the settlement that we made in 2010 was predominantly for, not exclusively, but predominantly for respiratory conditions, which tend to be more acute, or at least acute when they arise, as opposed to more distinctly latent injuries. For example, hard tumor cancers have an extremely long latency period, can be well in excess of 15 years. And so while we have no scientific basis to know for certain what might arise in the near term or in the more distant future, we can certainly believe that if there is a hard tumor cancer connection, it would be something that could still be coming into the future.
So the expectation is that you'll deal with the issue of these early onset things, but you'll continue in existence for a considerable period of time, waiting that time flow out to see what other kinds of occurrences come about.
That's correct. The company was formed with an original 25-year charter, so from 2004 to 2029. It's not necessarily a hard stop date, but it is a date by which some other financial vehicles are supposed to be explored and considered in a possible rollover into a different kind of insurance vehicle.
Thank you.
There is another mechanism for people who have been hurt to collect, and then it's an offset.
Sure. There was originally a victim compensation fund that was originally set up to deal with really people who were immediately impacted by the events of 9/11, and then that was reopened about the time that we were reaching our settlement, when there was a recognition in Congress that people who had illnesses as opposed to immediate injuries may not have been as fairly treated under the governmental program. And so the reopened victim compensation fund is scheduled to continue to take claims through October of 2016. People who participated in our settlement in 2010 were also able to participate in the reopened VCF with an offset to their VCF award based on what our settlement was.
Okay. I had you speak about this lawsuit on the bonus payments, and yet in this accounting you don't accrue anything. Is that it, sir? I mean, it's a potential, but you don't accrue for it.
Well, right, because when we took our original deposit of $1 billion, essentially fully accrued for any payments that we would have to make because we established.
So you say I don't have to adjust it for this. Okay.
Right.
My other question was, you're allowed to invest some of your money in corporate securities, I mean in equities?
We're permitted, but to date we have not.
I thought you were...
We certainly hold corporate bonds.
They're bonds?
Corporate bonds.
They're not equities?
Correct.
Okay. I would think there'd be a restriction, or there isn't any for what insurance companies can invest in.
Actually, for The WTC captive, as a pure captive insurance company, typically they have much more leeway
Okey-doke.
because, you know, their sponsor ultimately would have to true the company up, is the thought for any deficit. However, the WTC captive looked at, while it wasn't subject to it, we looked at the New York State insurance law for more typical insurance companies when we put together our investment policy, and it's a very conservative profile that the
Sure.
company has
No.
always followed. And we always considered that we were in a very unique situation since we had a one-time premium. Since this was grant money, we have always been very conservative of how we've allocated our resources.
I think it was the first year that you invested in the corporate bonds, am I correct? Or you,
From time to time throughout, we have owned high-quality, short-term corporate
Okay.
bonds from time to time throughout the company's.
but you don't invest in them directly. You're going, I mean, is it almost like a mutual fund of bonds, a bond fund or something?
BlackRock is our outside investment
Okay, I
manager,
figured that.
and we actually do have a separately managed account.
Okay.
So we have generally two profiles. We'll have, our shorter-term investments will be in what they call a liquidity fund, kind of like a money market type fund, although they do individually select the securities.
Okay.
And then we have a short duration portfolio, which I think goes out to about, on average, a duration of 1 3/4 year. And they also individually select those securities. It's a separately
Sounds
managed
fine.
fund.
And I guess it's the same question, it's the same answer as I asked you on the bonus payments. You don't accrue for any further you may know that there are settlements out there, activity, but you just don't accrue. There's enough in the...
Well, I mean, the distinction being, day one, when the company got its funding, we accrued for everything we could accrue for.
Yeah, you accrued for that, okay.
So therefore, as opposed to the way you would typically think of accruing for something that, that will
May
go through
happen.
your P&L, when we set up our deposit liability,
And that's
we accrued for the maximum amount we'd be able to pay out, other than what we set aside for our residual liability.
Got you.
But at the end of the day, given that we didn't kind of take on an insurance risk, the totality of our assets are available to pay
Sure.
obligations we would have, but no more. And so it does seem strange, but yes, we don't, since that accrual was set up in the deposit liability for contract expenditures, there's no additional accrual that ever takes place with respect to possible
Okay.
payments. They simply go out as cash and reduce that liability when they are crystallized.
Does the New York State Insurance Department examine your statements? Do you have to issue to them?
We have to file an annual statement with the Department of Financial Services once a year. B, they get a copy, and we have to file our audited financial statements with them every year. And C, there's a requirement that all captive insurance companies be examined by the Department of Financial Services on a periodic basis. We have had an examination. I think it was, that report was issued in, I believe, 2009, and there
No
were
problem.
no problems
Okay.
with that. And that report is available
No, I was just...
online. And we also, I'm sorry, Dave reminds me, we also file with various regulators, including the city, the Department of Financial Services, and FEMA, our quarterly unaudited financial statements.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you again for coming, and all the best.
Thank
Good.
you. Thank you.
Very good.
Sure. Adopted, yes, for second too. They adopted second.
You gotta pray to God.
Right.
Yeah, you can. Well,
look, you're fine, stay where you are.
Go with the transit authority. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, sit next to Bill. And Jackie. Good morning. Jack.
Will you be doing Satoa as well, or is there someone else for Satoa?
No, we're doing Satoa. I'll be doing the transit.
No, take the microphone, speak into it, it'll be easier.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Bill Vizulis. I'm the controller of New York City Transit Authority. I'll be doing New York City Transit, and next to me is Jackie Espina. She's the Deputy Director of Operations Accounting for the Transit Authority. She's going to cover Satoa.
You'll do Satoa.
That's right, so we'll cover both.
You forgot, I said Satoa.
Yeah, Mike Mantel's going to miss this year. He's actually in Paris at his daughter's wedding, but he...
I'm sorry?
Mike Mantel, who usually comes,
Yeah.
is going to miss this year. He's at his daughter's wedding in Paris, so...
In Paris?
Yes.
It's a beautiful wedding.
Yes.
We're laughing privately. We have one of our audit committee members is out on business in Paris and other parts of France, so Mike wisely said maybe he's attending the wedding.
Good guess.
Did you want to make a statement based on the MD&A on...
Yes, I have a prepared.
Introduce yourself again for the record, please.
Yes,
'cause I-
I'm Bill Vizulis, and I'm the controller of the New York City Transit Authority.
And the lady?
And this is Jackie Espina. She's the Deputy Director of Operations Accounting for the Transit Authority.
And this is your clients?
This is my client as well, both for
Okay,
transit
very
and
good,
Satoa.
all right.
Okay, we'll start with the New York City Transit Authority
Please.
financials. And this is off the MD&A. The finances of the New York City Transit Authority have remained very stable in 2014 as a result of increased ridership and the result of the improving economy and real estate market, which increased our tax-supported subsidies. As a result, we have had a small surplus of $54 million in 2014 as compared to a small deficit of $7 million in 2013. I'm going to go over the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position to describe the key items that have moved from 2013 to 2014. So we'll start with the statement of revenue expenses on page 17. Revenue from fares increased from $4,052 million in 2013 to $4,191 million in 2014, an increase of $139 million, or 3.4%. The increase was primarily due to the annualization of the March 2013 fare increase and higher subway ridership. The total passenger ridership increased by 1.4%. Total paratransit revenue and funding was $194,100,000 in 2014 to compare to $186,100,000 in 2013, which was an increase of $8 million. Paratransit expenses were $455 million in 2014 compared to $450 million in 2013, an increase of $5 million or 1.1%, due primarily to increased salaries and benefits costs. Advertising and other revenue increased by $12.9 million, primarily due to increased advertising ad placements in 2014. Operating expenses. Operating expenses rose from $10,023 million in 2013 to $10,518 million in 2014, an increase of $496 million or 4.9%. Within operating expenses, salaries and wages were up $137 million or 4.1%. Payroll increased by 2.8%. As most represented and unrepresented personnel received wage increases in 2014, and headcount increased in support of various maintenance programs and operations requirements. Overtime expenses increased by 15% due to mostly to adverse weather, maintenance, unscheduled service, and vacancy absentee coverage requirements. Health and welfare expenses increased $49 million, or 7.9%, due primarily to rate increases. Other fringe benefit expenses increased $55 million, or 7.9, other fringe benefits expenses increased $55 million, or 14.4%, due primarily to higher workers' compensation reserve requirements based upon our actuarial valuation. Post-employment benefits other than pensions increased by $111 million, or 5.9%, due mostly to our recent actuarial valuation. Paratransit service contracts decreased by $1 million, reflecting a reduction in the number of trips in 2014 and cost reductions that were obtained from the primary carriers as a result of the renegotiation of expiring contracts. The volume of trips decreased by 4.2% from 6,694,000 to 6,414,000, or 279,169 less trips. Maintenance and other operating contracts increased by $18 million, or 10.8%, due mostly to increases in expenses for vehicle purchases, security services, safety equipment, water and sewage, and rent. Professional service contract expenses decreased by $20 million, or 13.9%, due primarily to reductions in workers' comp board administrative expenses based on legislative changes in the computation. Pollution remediation project costs decreased $12 million, or 50%, due to decreased remediation projects, mostly for asbestos and soil remediation. Materials and supplies expenses increased by $38 million, or 14.4%, due largely to additional maintenance material requirements for both vehicles and facilities. Depreciation expenses increased by $99 million, or 7%, due to the capitalization of new station rehabilitations, track work, signal enhancements, and new subway cars in 2014. Moving on to non-operating revenue, tax-supported subsidies from New York State increased by $34 million, due primarily to increased petroleum subsidies of $51 million, increased Metro Mass tax subsidies of $33 million, offset by lower payroll mobility tax subsidies of $50 million. Tax-supported subsidies from New York City increased by $176 million, due mainly to increased collections of New York City mortgage tax due to the strength of the real estate market in New York City. Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority support increased by $19 million due to the effect of toll increases and the growth in traffic volume from 284,500,000 vehicles in 2013 to 286,400,000 in 2014, an increase of 1.8 million vehicles, or 0.6%. Skipping to capital contributions, there was an increase of $197 million in capital contributions due to increased capital expenditures funded from several sources, including bonds, federal, state, and city funding. The net result was an improvement in net position from a deficit of $7 million in 2013 to a surplus of $54 million in 2014. On the statement of net position on page 15, going to the assets, cash and MTA investment pool combined was $342,294,000 in 2014, compared to $136,692,000 in 2013. The increase was primarily due to the timing of when we received cash reimbursements from MTA HQ for capital projects. Due from MTA and constituent authorities increased $255,292,000 due to delays in receiving payments from other MTA agencies for intercompany billings of services provided to those agencies. Mostly this was from MTA Bus. Material and supplies increased $37,696,000 due to additional inventory and supplies being stocked to support new subway cars, vehicles, and increased maintenance work. Prepaid expenses and other current assets increased $18,372,000 due mainly to additional prepayments for insurance coverage in 2014. Capital assets The increase in capital assets was due to additions of $1,777,000,000 for stations, $586 million for track and structures, $430 million for subway cars, $297 million for signals, $117 million for service vehicles, and $34 million for new buses. Significant projects of note are the number 7 line extension, which is scheduled for the beginning of revenue generation in the third quarter of 2015. The system is now operational and is being tested, and training is now being done for the subway operators on the new line. The Second Avenue Subway Phase 1.
One station so far.
I'm sorry?
On the extension, there's just the one station to the 34th Street, is that it?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
Okay.
The Second Avenue Subway Phase 1 from 61st Street to 96th is scheduled for the beginning of revenue generation in December 2016. Track work is now 40% complete. Electrical panels and connections are in the process of being installed. Stations are around 2/3 complete. Sandy-related work is ongoing in the tubes, crossing under the East River, and in the rehabilitation of the South Ferry Terminal is going well. Coming up in the future, we will be purchasing 300 CBTC-ready B Division R179 subway cars from August 2015 to August 2018. That's under our current capital program. We're also purchasing 126 CBTC-ready A Division R188 subway cars and converting 380 existing R188 cars to CBTC-ready. For those of you who are not familiar with CBTC technology, it is synonymous with positive train control that is used on the commuter rail lines. CBT technology will enable us to safely run subways closer to each other and maintain the ideal spacing of subway trains to move crowds more effectively and increase our throughput. As the number of subway riders is increasing, the move to this technology is the best way of alleviating the subway overcrowding. As part of the rollout of this technology, under the 2015 to 2019 capital program, which has yet to be approved, we are planning to purchase 940 CBTC-ready R211 cars that are currently in the design stage and the prototype stage. A portion of this purchase is expected to go toward replacing the aging fleet of subway cars at Sertoa. We also have 3 contracts that are in place to start delivery of 762 standard buses and 300 express buses that are needed to replace our aging fleet of buses. In the liabilities, accrued salaries, wages, and payroll taxes decreased by $226,192,000, primarily as a result of the payment of retro wage adjustment for the union contracts that were settled. Post-retirement benefits other than pensions increased by $1,638,000,000 due to the booking of reserves required for our actuarial computation of liability for post-retirement medical benefits. Estimated liability arising from injuries.
Did a little bit, don't you?
I'm
you
sorry?
do try to fund a little of your OPEB.
Yes, we do. We fund the requirement for the current year.
Okay.
Estimated liability arising from injuries to persons increased by $32,592,000 due to higher settlement payment levels and increases in large case reserves. I'd like to take this time to thank the city, our counterparts in the city, for their support during the past year. They've been excellent to work with us in maintaining our accounting and the financing of our operations. And thank all of you for your support also.
Okay, thank you. That was a very complete presentation. The 2015 to 2019 5-year capital program, you've submitted that to the Capital Review Board?
Yes, it's been reviewed. It's been submitted.
But yet
yes.
the funding, not all the funding has been spelled out, just the costs, I guess? The lady is shaking her head.
I don't believe, it's been submitted, but I don't know if it's been approved or if all the layout is. As of the year end, when we were preparing the financial statements, it was still.
No, as of 2014, of course not, okay.
Well,
No,
when
you
we
would
reviewed
submit it before.
2015, yes.
Yeah, I know, I understand.
Our understanding is that it was up in Albany this
sorry?
week. Our understanding is it was in Albany this week being considered,
Yeah,
but exactly the outcome.
Who sits on the Capital Review Board again? What is it? City, state, your agency? I forget. I used to know.
Yeah.
All right. I guess one of the accounting comments I have about this is like of the water board. Shouldn't and it's not your problem, shouldn't the fixed assets be the first item you show on the balance sheet? Michelle, it's the same thing. I mean, these are capital-intensive agencies. Why do we start with cash? Why don't we start with the fixed?
It's the more common presentation.
If this was Con Edison,
There was a time, as you recall, where it was more common to put
Yeah,
the
this-
fixed assets first.
but
But
it's
I think at this point, it's really done in availability, currency.
Liquidity,
Liquidity. It's a classified balance sheet, Bernie, and therefore it's a personal preference. It's an option, as Michelle's saying, but it's basically.
I've always felt, I mean, this is a capital-intensive agency, just like our water board is, but all right.
And it still operates on cash.
Yeah. In terms of Superstorm Sandy, you were hit pretty hard, right?
Yes, the tunnels under the East River were particularly hit
Yeah,
very hard, as well as
and-
the South Ferry station was really wiped
And
out.
then in the Rockaways, the whole.
The Rockaways line was
hit
completely
very
wiped
hard.
out. You know, our tests-
Yet, you had private insurance or your own captive to pay some of the bills?
Yes, we have a claim that went into our private insurance to cover the base amount that they were covered for, and then we did the excess over that.
Was
So
very
it's
fortunate.
come to.
Plus FEMA.
Yes, plus we also had FEMA money.
I'm sorry?
We received
Yeah,
money
you
from
got
FEMA too.
FEMA will,
which will
you'll
pay
have
for
to
it.
reimburse FEMA if you get the money from other insurance sources, yeah.
Right.
And of course, Bridget, TBTA that was hit very hard, that's not in your statements.
No,
That's
they have
separate.
separate financial
separate
statements than us,
financials.
yes. Now we can go over to have.
Sorry?
Jackie can go over Sertoa if.
I'm sure he's finished.
Yeah, no, I
Sorry,
just
go right
was,
ahead. No problem.
if you didn't have the payroll mobility tax, things would be terrible.
Yes, that's a significant part of our funding.
An important source. The city pays it too.
Yeah.
The city of New York, I think, pays 78 million or something like that. HHC pays it, all employers pay it, private as well as government, and you need it. What are you
Yeah,
gonna
we
do?
definitely need it.
There was a court case, and that was thrown out, questioning the legality of the payroll tax.
I believe it was thrown out. I'm
Yeah,
not
it
so
was.
sure, but I don't know. Yeah, I think the legality of it has been upheld, except in I guess Nassau County has contested it, but
Yeah,
but
the
it didn't
counties
go
outside
anywhere.
New York City were questioning.
Yeah, it did. They did try to stop it, but it didn't work. You know, but it's a significant part. It was $1,337 million of our funding. So,
Couldn't exist without it.
but it's down this year. It's about 50 million less than the prior year. It's a slight reduction.
The year before.
Yeah.
Larry?
Yes, thank you. On page 16, maybe talk a little bit more about one of the lines, the estimated liability arising from injuries to persons. Is there an uptick from 13 to 2014 from 108 million to 221 million? Could you just explain a little bit, is this to the employees, the workers, or is this to individuals who have had accidents or issues related to ridership?
That's a combination of the liabilities to the workers for workers' comp, as well as the claims from people who are injured by accidents and filing lawsuits against us.
And this
it's
is
an up-
done as a actuarial as estimation? Well, how is this computed in terms of projected outstanding litigation? And has there been an increase of number of accidents, and therefore you're anticipating a higher?
There's been an increase in the dollar amount of the claim settlements, and that's what, and looking at those and the trends, they do a reserve calculation based on the knowledge of each of the cases to see where we need to accrue for, how much we need to accrue for. And the fact is that there's been an increase in the level of the awards, So that generates the fact that based on what you're looking at in the current cases, that this would probably be the outcome of them.
In some other agencies, we've noted that, I think HIC and others have looked at programs to limit liability, to lower the number of incidences, occurrence of accidents in terms of against employees and against folks who utilize our services. Do you have a mitigation program in order to analyze and look towards lowering potential liability?
Yes, there's an extensive program within the safety area to control to try to reduce the accidents within our operations, and in the workers' comp, there's extensive amount of work with the workers to try to reduce those claims also. We keep a very close watch on them and try to work them to be as low as possible, considering the type of work that they're doing. But there's a tremendous amount of effort that's put into that program, and it is effective, but the trend has been in even workers' comp, because the amount of awards has grown as legislation has changed, that it's been increasing over time. Although there's been attempts to try and reduce it by limiting the number of years someone is on workers' comp and things like that, but still the dollar amount is the amount of compensation that they're giving people for wages, wages is higher under legislation now.
So
that's
you're saying the
generating.
increase is attributable to higher settlements, not more claims?
No, not more claims. Well, it's both. Actually, it's both. There's an increase in claims too. So
Increase in claims
yeah.
as well.
They do it actuarially.
But there's constant effort going on to try and control the number of claims that we incur by working with the workers and stressing safety and look and review of accidents to see what it is that's causing the accidents, if there's something there that can be done. As well as through our internal control program, we have internal control policies and procedures and a review of and testing that goes on to make sure that people are following the guidelines, following the procedures, making sure that they actually do what they're supposed to do as far as making sure they're doing things in a safe manner, the way they've been taught to do it.
I mean, part of that is also the increase of ridership that you noted earlier, with a larger number of people on platforms in terms of ridership on buses. There's going to be potentially a percentage of higher incidences.
Yes, there's definitely a factor. That's one of the big factors, is that there's much more people on the subway. There's an awful lot of the buses, there's more traffic on the roads. As the economy is increasing, there's more potential for collisions or people getting injured.
And it's just one of those liabilities, which I guess as the audit committee, is a concern. So that's what. Thank you very much for answering.
Yeah, and we think that, as I said, that CBTC technology, that computer-based train control, will really be that's what we believe is a big help to moving people off the stations more effectively and moving people down the line. This way they don't build up on the stations. There's more risk of people getting injured, and trying to keep the trains, not having the trains too overloaded, that we can try to move them better. Of course, the big challenge is always the rush hours to do that.
Your public liability expenses, as I recall years ago, you had what was being expensed was the actuarial cost. You had this was the whole package. This is how we want it.
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Okay. And in terms of
No,
I'm sorry.
Finish your thought, Bernie.
No, and on the paratransit costs,
Yes.
the city is now, I think, expensing quite a bit for paratransit, don't we now? I believe so.
It actually went down for like the first time I've ever remembered. Even though it was only $1 million, I was going to comment on that.
No, I think
There was a lot of effort behind that.
What a large cost it is, but you have to spend it in accordance with the American with Disabilities Act. There's no choice.
Yes, but we've been able to control the costs by working with the primary carriers to renegotiate their contracts down and do a careful inspection of their financial records.
They're all private.
Yes,
they're all private. Yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
Very quickly, in your 2013 financial statements, you said that during 14, the Fulton Street Center would be completed, which I guess it was, and the number 7 line, which I don't think is functional yet, and I'm not sure what the estimate now is for when it will be. But I noticed you didn't update that information in this year's.
Yeah, what happened was, they hit a problem with the number 7 line, that the ventilation fans failed the, what they call the FAT testing, the factory acceptance testing, and that was a key component because of the depth of the line. Those had to work properly to proper ventilation, as well as there's that line is going to be a little unique. From what I understand, the station is going to be very, very large, and they were doing some things that are brand new, so it's a little hard to gauge when that's going to be ready. Because from what I understand, the size of the station is equal to what the Empire State Building is turned sideways. So it's going to be very huge with some very large escalators. But that's supposed to be ready in the third quarter of this year. And as I said, they've got, the trains are actually running. It's in full mode. They're just basically debugging it and working on some of the access on the elevators. It's an inclined elevator, which will be the first time we've ever had an inclined elevator in any of our stations. So it's a little bit new to us.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, we're running. You just touched on the 2nd Avenue subway about a year, December 6, 2016.
That's right. That's the latest estimate.
Operation to 61st, you said?
That would be from 61st to 96th Street. That would be up to
61st to
96, right. And then there's still the second phase of that project would take it from 96 to 125th Street. And that one still hasn't been funded. So there's that's a further extension.
The project that seems to have taken the longest was the East Side Access.
The East Side Access, that's in continuous thing to go on and on. But that's in the next program also. There's a
Sorry?
That's also in the next funding.
In another few years?
Yeah, that's what the plan is.
All right. If there are no other questions, I thank you for your very complete report. We'll quickly move to SATOA. You have it? Oh, here it is. And the size, you pale compared to the Transit Authority, I know.
I'll go quickly.
But
It's a lot shorter. So we can
go ahead.
start-
You wanted to say a little statement? Go right ahead.
Yeah, we can start at page 12. It's the statement of revenue, expenses, and changes in net position. Total operating revenues increased about 5%, 365,000, mainly related to the increase in fare revenues. This was primarily due to the annualization of the March 2013 fare increase and higher riderships. There was about 3.5 increase in ridership. Total operating expenses increased 18%, $9.2 million. The main drivers of the increase were salaries and wages, which the main reasons were there was a 5-year catch-up retroactive wage accrual for the UTU union, also payroll increases in 2014 for non-represented employees, and there was a net increase in headcount of about 7%. Health and welfare increased $1.3 million, approximately $1.3 million, and was mainly due to rate increase in the cost and also the increase in headcount. Other fringe benefits increased by $1.6 million. This was mainly due to higher workers' compensation reserve requirements based upon actual evaluation, as well as the increase in FICA expense related to the retro wage accrual and wage increases. Insurance expense increased about $1 million. This was mainly due to higher coverage, higher premiums, and also a correction in the allocation of SATOA's share. Professional service contracts increased about $500,000, and this was mainly due to some IT-related system upgrades and also engineering services for inspection of bridges throughout Staten Island. Non-operating revenues would remain pretty stable. There was a slight increase of 8% or $2.2 million. This was mainly due to, one was the New York City Operating Recovery Subsidy. The estimated, that increased about $3.8 million, and that was an estimated increase of the 2014 operating loss. That subsidy gets recorded on there's a year lag, so the current year, the 2014, gets recorded based on an estimated.
You're talking about the subsidy from the city?
Yes.
So they are giving you funds now, they are providing funds to Satoa now? Because
Correct.
for a while they weren't.
Correct.
And I think part of the reason was that you didn't have Satoa didn't have the ability to collect fares only at the two ends. Now you have turnstiles at all the stations?
I don't
See,
think we have
no.
turnstiles.
Satoa was like a railroad, so you used to
Right, it
have
still
conductors. It didn't pay to keep conductors to pay. So there
Correct.
was only those 2 points, and I think there was a controversy at one time with the city where they stopped funding because of that. But now you're collecting fares along the way, or you don't know?
I don't think we have we still have the same turnstiles, which is like at the two, like you said, at the two ends,
But not in between?
but not in between.
So if somebody wants to go a stop at 2, they can go for nothing, all right? No, it's
That's-
limited
yeah,
railroad.
that's still the
I'm
case.
not
But what
knocking
they
it.
have, Bernie, is they've added
Speak up.
more resources on the trains. It is an open system still, except
Open
at the
system.
beginning and ending
Yeah,
points.
no,
But on the trains themselves, they've invested in technology and people, and they're collecting more fares on the
So there
in-between
are people
stops.
collecting fares on the
Yes,
train?
yes.
Good. Nicole, speak up.
They actually also collect fares at the second to last stop too, because
Good.
people are actually getting off one stop before
So
the
they
ferry
didn't have to
to
pay the
walk.
fare. Yeah, no, no, that's good.
That's what they did.
So the improved collection. Okay. So going back to the.
Oh, no, it's all right. Go ahead.
And then there was a decrease in FEMA and FTA reimbursement of 1.7, so that was offset. We have an increase in MTA capital contributions for projects of about 11.2%, and that was mainly due to increased capital expenditures related to Sandy mitigation projects in 2014. And the net result was an increase in net position of about $5 million compared to last year, which was a decrease of 1.1. Questions?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Two quick things where I would have expected to see a little more symmetry between TA and Sertoa. One is the salary increase. It looks like the salary and wages expenditures for Sertoa went up by almost 22%, whereas in the Transit Authority it was closer to 4%.
Correct. And a lot of it has to do with, there was, like I said, there was a net increase in headcount of about 7%.
Okay.
That had a lot to do. It wasn't just and also we had, for Sertoa, there was a 5-year catch-up on retro wage accrual, which didn't happen on TA
Got
side.
it. Okay, and the other one has to do with the flood insurance. You seem to have a much greater flood insurance expense this year than last year. I did not see a commensurate increase in the Transit Authority. I was curious. Is that just a timing thing? Transit had a longer-term insurance contract, and you're now in the market, which is higher?
For Sertoa, the reason, there's a couple of things that are different from TA. It's mainly in Sertoa, there was a change in how the allocation takes place, so it changed the structure, and also.
Allocation by MTA of costs, or what allocation changed?
It's, yeah, the MTA allocation, yes.
Thank you. Great. That's it for me.
I just have one question. I'm not sure if you can answer this, but.
Speak up, Nicole.
Do you know what the rationale is behind why you're not fare collecting at the stops in between the first and second to last?
I'm not sure, but I believe it has to do with, and I've never been on the actual subway, but what I've heard is the way the stations are laid out, it's not, I don't know if it's economically feasible to put the turnstiles, to put the turnstiles there, I'm not sure.
The investment to change the stations to accommodate the turnstiles is a large investment, to put the power and to put the whole operations, the turnstile units in and so forth. So the thought is that it may not be worth the amount of money that would have to go into rehabilitating the station to put those in that you'd get from the tolls, from the fares, the increased
I
fares.
assume some kind of break-even analysis was done in order to come to that conclusion?
Well, I'd have to see what the analysis, I don't have one myself, but I could find out for you.
Yeah, that might be good, thank you.
A lot of people don't know, before Satoa, it was owned by the B&O Railroad. That's right. Baltimore, people don't know what B&O is, it's the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. So I don't know, did we buy a pig in a poke? I guess not, you had to have transportation, and it's cost money to keep repairing it, sure. All right.
Okay. If we go to
And with, I guess with the growth and the population in Staten Island, there has been an increase in the ridership.
yeah, there was actually, yeah, it's like 3.5 increase in ridership from 2013 to 2014.
Are there any more questions for Satoa? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we best move on. Good job.
Thank you.
I still think they should put that capital first, Mike, another TA, water on here. You have to defer time?
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
this was the only one.
No, that's, no, he did a good job. A lot of, Mike Mantell, I know, I think he's his deputy. Go ahead. So you have the remote? Okay. Good morning, everybody. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Good morning. Joan Barrow, Chief Accountant, Deferred Compensation Plan.
Beth Kushner, Deputy Director of Administration for the Deferred Compensation Plan.
Warren Ruppel, partner with Marks Paneth.
Ed Chen, Manager of Marks Paneth.
Okay. Do you have a statement or something? Did you want?
Yes. Good morning.
You're making a lot of money, I think. You're doing pretty well.
Yes, the plan net position exceeded 15.5 billion at December 31st, 2014, and this increased of $1 billion since 2013. The net investment income did decrease in 2014. It went down from 2.2 billion in 13 to 0.9 billion in 2014. The participants' contributions and the benefits paid out did increase across all plans during 2014.
Do you insure anything? No.
I'm sorry?
Do you insure any of the investments? It's a loaded question because she remembers and I remember when one of the insurance companies went belly up. But the industry paid up, made good on it, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
that's correct.
All right. I guess I guess the major investment vehicle in the 457 plan is still the stable income fund?
That is correct, yes.
That is, yeah. People don't play games with their retirement money, okay.
No.
Do you still do securities lending?
No, they stopped it, thank God, but I hate that. And I was going to ask him, when the plan, I was involved with the initial plan when we put it together and so forth. There were a lot of people involved. I remember that in order to make withdrawal, if you weren't retired, it had to be a hardship. That's still the case?
The plan does offer loans in the 457
You provide loans?
And the 401K, yes.
Which then are repaid with interest?
Yes.
Yes. And the interest rate is approximately determined how or what or
Prime plus 1%.
Prime plus?
Plus 1%.
I thought you hit them hard. All right. I mean, I think the plan is very successful, really. It's a credit to all of you. It's moving along very, very well, and more and more employees are participating. When it started, just a little history. Mario Cuomo was the governor, and he wanted to do something for his managers. So he retained Mercer, and Mercer came up with this 457 program. And when the city first implemented, it was just being offered to managers, and then it expanded to uniform force personnel, and now to everybody, which I think is fair. And you talk about the limits of investment in dollars. Are there any percentage limits?
It's
75% of salary. is
So you
maximum.
can go as high as that?
Yes, because there are
Boy,
other,
it's different than it was at the beginning.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
yeah, there has to be other deductions.
sorry?
There are other deductions that may be mandatory from an employee's paycheck.
Uh-huh.
So 75% being
Oh,
the
sure.
max will
It's
allow.
actually almost putting in your whole check. All right.
Yes.
They have rich fathers, I guess. I don't know. Rich spouses. You can't do a little better on the stable income fund? Is that it? That's all they're paying the gigs, so the 2% or something? My son participates in it, so that's why.
Actually, we just had a report at the board recently.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kushner?
They had a report at the board recently where the stable income fund has, since its inception, outperformed. So it's done
All
well.
right. Oh, your other returns are quite good. The only one was the international equities. Got to be crazy to invest in that. You really do. Your retirement money, that'd be nuts. But okay, I'm not an investment advisor. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Nicole.
For the self-directed brokerage option, has there been any discussion about opening up the investment options beyond the pre-selected mutual funds that are listed? In other words, having it be a purely self-directed investment option?
That is, the board has discussed the self-directed brokerage option, and they do revisit that periodically, but right now they've made a decision to keep it mutual funds only. And it's also limited on how much money they can put in the brokerage window. It's 20% of the account balance.
Is that stemming from concern of protecting corpus?
There's lots of reasons, but part of that is because participants may go into the brokerage window not knowing exactly how to invest. There are other fees involved outside of the plan fees that are a concern as well.
Go ahead, Len.
So you indicated that more employees are utilizing the 457 deferred comp program. In what ways are you doing in terms of increasing the utilization? Is it an education effort? Is it or is it, like our agency, the Public Advocates Office, all new employees last year? I think everyone got it in their packet, but to what extent has there been a affirmative outreach to encourage uses of the program?
Sure. We have a staff that go out to the agencies and do what we call enrollment meetings. So what we do is we meet, we have a good relationship with the agency personnel or benefit representatives, and we try to have on-site meetings. We find that works better than having the employees take time from work and come to deferred compensation. We also offer holistic financial planning seminars that we encourage employees to come to participate in, again, at the work site and on-site at the plan's administrative office. So we try to, these a little easier in the uniform areas because the word of mouth is incredibly strong, as well as their superior officers. But with the civilian agencies, it's a little more complicated, and plus they're spread out across the city. But we are available at any time an agency or an employee requests, we will come out to the agency and do a presentation.
So one of the issues my office is working on, I know the controls as well, is retirement security in the private industries, because it's one of the things that New York City employees have as a benefit, folks like yourself who were able to manage and collect assets. But a lot of employees who leave the city of New York also have the option of removing their monies from deferred comp once they leave without penalty. To what extent is there post-employment outgoing employment education in order in terms of portability, in terms of retention, so that we do have our employees, when they are private citizens, if they leave, not become part of the problem of a retirement security issue.
Right, that's actually a very, something that the board and the plan administration has looked at very closely, because employees are not required to take the funds out when they leave. The 457 has no early withdrawal penalties. But we do try to encourage employees to come to our seminars. We have a retirement planning and a distribution planning, so they understand. Plus, they have pre-tax and Roth deductions. So what is the right order of taking distributions from the plan? Because this can have a very big impact financially, depending on their account balance sizes. We also implemented the deemed IRA, or the NICE IRA, New York City Employee IRA. That's the NICE. So that employees, because the IRA is such a familiar term to them, and they've heard they should be rolling funds to an IRA, that they can actually keep it in the plan and set up an IRA in the plan with the same investments, the same fee structure, and hopefully that education is working. We're seeing our assets increase, we're seeing participation increase, and they can, so we have the 457, the 401k, pre-tax and Roth on both sides, the NICE IRA, pre-tax and Roth, spousal IRA, pre-tax and Roth, trying to give them as much opportunity to invest and take advantage of the low fees that the plan offers. So the seminars are a critical part of that, as well as working hand in hand with the benefit reps.
Are there any other questions? We do have some management letter comments, and the first one, management, I guess it's a technical IT comment. They're moving from one system to another, and hopefully that will resolve the problem.
Yeah, just in general, there was a comment on administrative access to, administrative rights to programs, which our technology folks could be limited more and supervised more, as well as password changing, password management. They had some comments on that. The plan is moving to a new operating system and intends to implement the recommendations when the...
So that should kind of take care of the two comments, that and the password comment. Right. Okay. And
the other comment involves kind of encrypting information that's scanned, and they made a lot of progress on doing that.
They've made progress on the other
just
one.
encouraging them to take that to the next step.
So nothing that serious, no. All right. Thank you for coming. There doesn't seem to be anything serious, which is good. You don't want to get insurance. You want to be high flyers, so we'll let you alone. Give my best to Georgette, would you, please? Thank you. I know a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Nice seeing you, Warren. Thanks. All right, I guess the next item is the audit committee members. We should move into executive session. We need a motion. I'd appreciate a motion to go into executive session. Second? Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break.
They're basically holding everybody's mic.
He has to tune up the mics.
Okay, we are back.
I move that we adopt the recommendation of the selection committee.
I second the motion.
Just to clarify, that would be to engage Grant Thornton and their partners to perform the citywide audit for 4 years, beginning with fiscal 16.
Okay with that. No, that's fine. I think I had told you once, Michelle, that I may be a little conflicted because I have a very close friend who was in the tax department of Montana. There's no conflict. I mean, he does some work for me, the firm, very little fees, but you don't feel it's a conflict. All right.
So is that a unanimous vote?
I guess so. Yes, okay. Mark, when are you gonna be back in New York? All right, I'll call you then.
You can continue to talk to Mark, I just wanted to get.
No, I just.